All right, so we just got the recording in. Everybody, thank you so much. My name's Cody Smith, Old Oaks Country Club, on behalf of the Met PGA Education Committee. Again, thank you so much. It means a lot that we can get 120 people together, do these Zoom calls, keep them going. Caitlin mentioned last week was like 140, 150 people. The last couple Zoom calls prior to that were in the hundreds to 120. So if it wasn't for you guys and hopping on and joining, we wouldn't still have this great program. Before we get going, I just wanted to mention we have a couple more education events coming up. If you haven't noticed, the Met Section team has been doing a wonderful job sending out an email. I believe one came out last night at 6 p.m. If you want to be able to use some quick links to sign up for some of the different events that are coming up. February, next week, February 24th, inventing a golf product to bring to market. That one I think is really interesting, something we've never talked about or heard about before. Craig Hucknall is going to be the guest speaker on that one. Monique and Golf Zone, they've done a wonderful job putting together like a mini summit with Troon Golf. So Troon is doing like a Northeast Coach Summit, March 3rd, March 4th, Golf Zone Social in Scarsdale. So it's a little bit local summit for everyone to go to, and it's going to be great. On the link, you click on it. I did it last night. It's $195. Monday is like a full 9 to 5. The next day is maybe like in the morning till about noon or 1. So it's a shorter day on day 2. But you got Mike Jacobs, Chuck Cook, David Ledbetter. One of our own, Monique Torres, is going to be presenting as well. I think Breed. I'm missing a couple people, so I do apologize if I'm missing a name or two there. But it's like a great cast of people, and it's in person. So take the opportunity, sign up. Again, Golf Zone Social, the one in Scarsdale. So it's very local for us. Westchester, Fairfield County, and I know it's always a hike for y'all, Long Island professionals to come over the bridge, but we'd love to have everyone show up. But no more of me talking. I want to get right to it. I'm thrilled. I've kind of known Michael Manavian for a little bit, but he moved to Florida, so we don't see his pretty face as often. But I'm really excited for this one because it's unique. He comes from two backgrounds that you would think may or may not be, we don't know yet, could be wildly different. Stack and Tilt this teaching system, but then there's Gears, this probably the best of the best when it comes to measuring 3D motion, not just in the body, but also the golf club. So for lessons and club fitting. He's very talented in both. Excited to have him on. He's at 24/7 Golf in Stuart, Florida. He's a full-time coach, spending a significant amount of his time now with Champions Tour players and other great touring professionals. But other than that, ladies and gentlemen, a Stack and Tilt certified instructor, a gear specialist, club fitting specialist, Michael Manavian. Michael, thank you.
Hi, Cody. Thank you for you and the staff at the Met Section for setting this up. And it's nice to kind of come home in a sense. I started my career in the Met Section back in '98, right out of college, thanks to Frank Sergiovanni, and we ran the Golf Training Center in Norwalk, Connecticut. So it was a lot of fun to be there for the first few years of my career, where I really learned how to teach. And to be asked to do something almost 30 years later is feels old, but it also feels good. So thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Great to have you here. Great. So I think before we hop in, just because you're not a Met Section guy, you have some love for the Met Section, but you're down in Florida, so not everyone maybe knows you other than some of us pros older than 30. just a quick 2-minute background, like how'd you get in golf and where you're at?
Sure. So the quick rundown is I went to Methodist University in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and graduated from the PGM program there. Then I started teaching 2,800 half-hour lessons my first year in Norwalk at the Golf Training Center. It was a machine. And then from there, I had one client and taught him at Hudson National 28 days a month. And that was really a nice breakup. And then kind of left the industry for a little bit, got into the fitness world for about 10 years, 9 years. And then getting back into the industry, I started working at Ridgefield Golf Course, Round Hill. And then we opened up our own facility inside of a health club in Port Chester, New York. So that's where we got gears. I became a certified authorized stack and tilt instructor, and then did really good for 5 years, and the facility shut down and I decided to move to Florida. So still kind of snowbirding back and forth. And then this is my third year now coaching full-time on the Champions Tour. And I actually just picked up a PGA Tour player as well. So it's going to ramp up again here. Had a nice off season, but my time now is spent mainly coaching players, tournament players. I still do the club golfer here in Florida when they want to see me. But I do a lot of OEM testing and doing a lot of research projects for different manufacturers. That's a lot of fun, and it's interesting to see some of the results that we've gotten on that stuff. And then I do golf schools with Andy and Mike around the country, around the world for Stack and Tilt. So I'm
That's
busy.
awesome.
I'm on the road
Yeah,
for 30
great.
weeks a year, and my stuff lives here in Stuart, Florida, but I just travel.
Well, that's awesome. Well, we're glad then that you carved out an hour for your old time pals here at the Met section. So I think you have a couple slides that you're going to run
Yeah.
through. You're going to talk about gears, stack and tilt, and then you and I might have a little, if there's some time left, a little podcast style conversation. Anyone, if you guys have questions, please throw it in the chat. I got my eyes on the chat. If it's a question that I can interrupt Mike with and interject, I'll totally add it and get to it as fast as we can, and or even at the end. Maybe we'll just cruise through the chat as well, Michael, and we'll see if there was any questions that we missed that we could
Perfect.
go over. So yeah, the floor is yours.
Okay. Basic presentation, just kind of background slides for the discussion here. I'll be going through what gears is, what stack and tilt is, and then how I approach a lesson. And I'll share some case studies after that.
Awesome.
So first thing, what is gears? It's a very unique system in that it has 360 frames per second times 8 cameras. So we're shooting 500 frames or 500 captures per swing. And the benefit here is that you can see the overlay of how much, when, and where people are able to change or your direction to change them. So, for example, on this slide here, there was a significant left knee change from the gold to the blue. And then when you overlay those two, you see the 5-degree change there. And then you see the inclination to the ground changing. So you can do this in 2D. You can teach golf with a camera or an iPad, or heck, we used to do it with 30 frames per second, VHS cameras back in the day. And then you go to the tape deck and you put it in, you draw lines on the screen. So the vehicle that we use of gears is more like an MRI machine than a X-ray is a way to say it. So I have 3D ability to look at any swing from any camera angle. We suit them up with 14 sensors on the club for the calibration, then 6 remain. And then you can see on the right there, golfers wearing this suit. Now they've got a new hybrid system that is very exciting. If anybody's looking to purchase a gears machine for their facility, it's definitely an investment. And it takes a passionate instructor to be full-time on it. It's not something you kind of do on the side, from my experience. And there are some facilities I know of who have bought a gears machine and they just bring in an outsider in once or twice a year to sell $50,000 worth of clubs in a weekend, and just kind of make their ROI that way. But if you have a keen interest in teaching, it's really a way that I feel like I can give a 9-hour lesson in 90 minutes. So I can really compress the time of the change that I'm not wasting away to point out a visual. So I feel like, especially when I was in New York and Connecticut, the New York Minute, you don't have much time to, tiptoe around some of these players. These very powerful Wall Street people who are just in there and they got their phone in one hand, they got an earpiece in the other, hitting balls, they're talking to 8 people at once. You all know the type. So being able to be at their speed with all this versus having them wait, 15 minutes for you to draw some lines on a screen. But there's a new hybrid system coming out, which will have a hat and a belt, and that's it. The club still needs to be censored, but it'll be for those people who want an easier way to start up calibrating and measuring things on gear. So that's a fun new feature. Stack and Tilt. What is it? Very simply, it's a 3-dimensional description of how to play golf. So it is a system rather than a method. So that's a pretty important distinction. We all have systems. Every one of us here is watching this video utilizing a system of some sort. So everybody has an iPhone or an Android phone, 2 separate systems. So you have the iOS and you have the Android. Now, every Android or every iOS that was shipped out of the factory was the same. However, I'm willing to bet we got 98 participants right now, no 2 of your screens look the same. So a comprehensive system can have a customization to allow for all sorts of variations. So it's not a single method where we all say we do one thing. I've got players who hit cut shots. I got players who hit draw shots. We can joke that I don't like those that hit cut shots, but seriously, we can have a system to explain all shots. We have a highway system. I-95 drives from here to Maine. So there's a system. We're betting our lives that the people on the other side of the highway are not crossing that double line to hit us. And we're not going to just start driving on the left side of the road for no apparent reason. So there are systems all around us. The hot wire in electricity is always the black wire. So for some reason, golf has been stigmatized as a system is a bad word. And I actually embrace the system because my players appreciate that it's not just a magic fairy dust this week of why they're playing well. They have some systems, they have some logic, and the more and more I hang out with good players, they may not be able to articulate in anatomical terms or precision of what their systems are, but just go talk to Phil Mickelson, that video he did with Faraday. And I think most of us have seen that, where he starts talking about he has a system for how to approach the lie, how to look at the lie. If it's wet, if it's in the morning, the ball's going to go shorter. If it's hot in the afternoon and it's dry, it's going to go further. So, all these players I found out have a system of how to play golf, and Stack and Tilt was just one that can help an instructor explain what they're doing. It's designed to play golf. It's not just a theory in a laboratory. It was built in the dirt. And as I said, it can explain any shot anatomically. Looking at the word system, I just pulled this up on Google yesterday. Systems are organizations, arrangements, networks, compositions, apparatus, institutions. Some interesting synonyms there. What's the opposite is disarrangement, a mess, derangement, disorderness, clutter, jumble. When you look at some of your students' swings, they could benefit from having a system just by defining the word. So we have a model in the system, and they're designed to give us guidance on where to give our instruction from. So what determines where to start? It's kind of the all-encompassing question. So where do you start with Mrs. Haverkamp? Where do you start with Kevin Kisner? Stack and Tilt would model the swing as a double pendulum model, which attaches to the center of the swing, which would be the left shoulder. And I'll draw this out, but the left shoulder would be the center of the swing. We're trying to move the lead shoulder around another center, which would be attached by a third segment, the base of the shoulders, which is on the axis of the spine. And then we would have a translating lower segment, our hip slide would be going forward. So if I just switch to share my next screen here, and this would be a golfer, just a stick figure golfer drawn out. And we would say the left shoulder would be the center of the swing. That would create the low point on the ground. The flag would be to the right here. And if we had a swing arc for the club head and a swing arc for the hands, place the golf ball 3 golf balls back, that would create our angle of attack from our double pendulum system. So the basis of the angle of attack would form, the angle of attack, the ball being back on the arc, would form our addressed plane line or our 3-dimensional path out to the right. If you had the club face slightly closed to the 3-dimensional path, you would have your push draw built in. So where do these numbers come from? It's the basic geometry of the stroke that was in the Search for the Perfect Swing, was in the Golf Machine, Morad, Stack and Tilt, GolfTech. All these systems have validated this basic double pendulum model. I've asked multiple biomechanists, could you model it any other way? And there aren't many other different models available to model the swing. So if you have this basic foundational guidance, then you could say, well, if the lead shoulder is the center of the swing, that has to now travel down. The right shoulder has to travel up. The trail shoulder has to travel up in order to turn around another center, the base of the shoulders. By having your knees changing flex, that would keep the pelvis center in the backswing. Now you'd have your stacked vertebral column, right? We wouldn't want the head shifted to the trail side or the head shifted to the lead side. That's where the stack and tilt comes from, is that the vertebral column at the top of the backswing would be on top of each other. Each joint would be relatively on top of each other, plus or minus 5 degrees. So then on the downswing, we would have our lower translating hub, as we mentioned. That would create our formation for the rise and shallowing out the angle of attack. So that also is the formation of the low point being kept forward, where our high handicapped are shifting their weight back. So, you know, we're 10 minutes into this and we kind of dove in pretty deeply, but hopefully this will start making sense, and then it'll be on video and you can rehearse it, go back to it. But this would be the basic diagram or the basic model that Stack and Tilt is basing their swing on. And getting back here, it allows us to look at pieces and know where to start. So there are multiple systems that we use in Stack and Tilt, and one of them is a shot tree. Another one is the P system. I think most people nowadays in 2025 are familiar with the position system or the P system. And there's a systematic way on how to get the 3 fundamental tasks to help a player. And there's a system for every ball position and every shot possibility. So my players, when they stand up to a ball, they don't have any questions on where the handle has to be and where the club face has to be pointed and where the club head is on the arc. So just to dig deeper into these 4 slides, we have a shot tree. So on the left is diagram 1, where the path is all to the left. On the right is diagram 3, where the path is all to the right. And then diagram 2, where the path would be 0. And then if we just look at diagram 3A, that would be a straight push to the right, where all of these shots in diagram 3 could say, let's say they're all 2 degrees to the right with the path. Then you can make a discussion that, you know, if the face is 2 degrees to the right, path is 2 degrees to the right, you're going to hit a straight push 3A. So we can classify the shots when I'm seeing them on the driving range. And so I got 3A, and then the 3B would be a face close to the shaft, but not as much as 50%. So just be working towards the flag. The 3C would be 50%. So the face would be 1, the path would be 2. And then you can start seeing, well, if it's over 50%, then you'd have a shot 3D, shot 3E at 0 face angle, and shot 3F closed face angle. So now the fix for a shot that overdraws like a 3F is completely different than a shot that's 1H, which is a pull hook versus a deflected hook on the right. So you could have the ball end up in the same spot and have 2 completely different ways to address and know where to fix from. So classification of the shot, you know, TrackMan's great on, or any launch monitor is great really in measuring these pieces, but as a coach, you should be able to sit on a range with no technology and be a TrackMan yourself and go, okay, that ball started to the right, it curved left, didn't curve all the way to the target. I know that's a 3B. That ball started left, it curved back to the target, and it actually crossed over. Well, that's a 1D. And you know exactly, okay, so the path is to the left, path is to the right. You can now start getting, it's kind of like knowing which way north is. If you know where north is, you know where south is. And if you know where north is and south is, you know where east and west are. So by knowing one thing, you can know 4 things. And it's kind of the same thing here. It really makes a systematic, logical way for an instructor to diagnose the shot before you say anything. And then the piece.
And Michael, sorry to interrupt, but you're kind of also, you're bringing this up the shot tree there, because you're saying stack and tilt has kind of allowed you with the system, not the method, to help give your player kind of the whys and how these shots are happening. So you get a
Exactly.
player that we'll talk about later that, hey, if he hits diagram 3B, like he knows why he's doing that, and he knows why maybe he's hitting a different shot.
Yeah. I mean, Decade is a system that was built basically on these shot trees in a sense. You have your pattern, right? I tell my players, you know, your worst shot should be a 3A, your best shot should be a 3C, and your entire game should be in that cone. So how well can you aim this cone, which is where the Decade concepts kick in. So my players will hit, you know, 3A to 3D is basically a cone, and then being able to, Alex Chicka gets up on a tee box, and the wind's coming from the left, and there's water to the right. He knows where he's going to aim this face, where he's going to aim the handle in order to hit the shot required to work it against the wind and put it in play and find the fairway. Same thing with the iron shots and the approach shots. So having this type of reference point and knowing what's enough on each side, having some boundaries here of what's an acceptable shot pattern, it allows the player to start, playing that cone. So, and then the P system allows me as a coach to diagnose items throughout the swing. Knowing that where a player is at P6 allows me from the face on camera to know where the butt end of the club is, and then the club head from down the line relative to it. So I have a three-dimensional time and space thing where I know exactly how much of what, when I can apply to get the shot that you want. If a player's trying to hit a cut and the face is closed at P6 and that handle's way out and the club head's way in, it's going to be hard to hit cuts from there where it's designing more of a draw shot. So we have three fundamental tasks. We want to hit control our low point, hit solid shots. We want to hit it far enough to play the golf course. Those are the first two fundamentals that every club golfer fails. That's where I made my money teaching golf in the Met section. The better players can fall out of bed, travel around the country, and do those two things bar none without fail. It's that third fundamental. Why is the ball over curving today? Why is it under curving today? How do I get this drawback in, Mike? So the three fundamental tasks are where my brain goes to on where to make a recommendation for a player. And then we can place the golf ball anywhere on this arc, which would increase or decrease the swing direction or swing path rather, and then have the face pointed in where we want. So we have multiple systems in place here, just going back on the systematic approach, which is the essence of science, the being able to diagnose something and then make a recommendation the right way. So we're not guessing as stack and tilt instructors.
Yeah.
So is there something, Cody?
I was just gonna say, so you're kind of, what I like what you're saying is, you're just saying, even if somebody's not stack and tilt certified or anything like that, like, just kind of organize your thoughts, organize how you want to coach, whether it's, I don't have gears. You and I talked about this yesterday. Like,
Yeah.
I have Sports Box, I've got V1, I've got Smart to Move, we've all got our cell phone, and it's just kind of like, hey, organizing how I want to go through the lesson and kind of start a system. And I think where stack and tilt is benefiting for yourself and your students is, I don't want to say the Bible, but it's like, it's kind of laid out though, a system for you to follow.
I would say it's my toolbox. I mean,
Yeah.
Not everybody wears the logo. There's a famous instructor in the Northwest who says to Andy all the time, I have a 10-hour day, 8 hours are spent defending you and 2 hours are done doing my job. So some people don't want to wear the logo. I don't mind wearing the logo. I like the controversy. I don't mind, having the discussion. Cody, you're laughing, and most of the people here who know me are laughing on that. But stack and tilt has always been a system for golf instructors to take as much or as little as they want in order to help their students or themselves. And with gears, I had to come up with my own system or my own approach of how I utilize it. And over the past 11 years of having one, first thing I do, just to walk through somebody if the process of how we organize our lessons, spent 3 to 5 minutes calibrating the body, which is pretty quick. It could take up to 10 when I first started. So you get really good at getting the waiters and waitresses in on your machine to practice calibrating. And then sometimes we have to calibrate their clubs. If it was just a lesson, I would pretty much use a stock club that I have, a house club. If it's a better player, I will take the time, ask them to come in a little early, calibrate their clubs, so that we can use those in the session. But if it's a club golfer, higher handicap, the club's not going to really matter at that point. They need to learn how to control their low point. So there's a difference between a lesson and a fitting. After 3 to 7 shots, you have a pattern formed. They're not magically going to start doing something differently. So you have them hit three to 7 solid shots, and then you take a look at one. And the first big thing I use gears for is to analyze, what do we see here? Mr. Haverkamp, are you seeing what I'm seeing? Are we in agreement that your head is shifting 8 inches outside the head bubble in the backswing? Are we agreeing that the hand path went in and then went over on the downswing? They'll say no. Oh, I never slice. Yeah, we know you never slice, but this is saying that the face is open to the shaft 8 degrees. You're slicing. So you just stand on them, and being able to control the lesson tee. I've stood on my tee box and not pushed them off physically, but not allowed them to gain entrance to where the golf balls are. Control the golf balls, control the tee box. Don't put a bucket of balls out there that they can just rake up. They're going to hit one shot. We're going to take a look at it. Once they warm up and they're ready to go, let's get into agreement. What do we see Mr. Smith doing here? And the way I like to go about it is I look from the caddy view, P1 start of the golf swing to P4 top of the backswing. Okay, what am I looking at the frontal plane from there? I'm looking at where their head is. Is their head shifting to the trail side? I would know that if they're shifting to the trail side, they're maintaining their forward bend as they're turning around. If their head goes forward, I know they're overextending or tilting to the left faster than their turn. So I'm already getting that compass type of direction of where to go. And then I'll look at it from P1, P4 down the line. So I'm gonna take a look at how their hand path's moving. I'm gonna look at their inclination to the ground. Are they tilting in the same amount to maintain their inclination? A couple of nice things that every instructor here can use as a formation of what to look for. You've got all these sports boxes and cell phones and all. The iPad on form's a great one. What are you looking for in the golf swing? And Mr. Smith, you just shank 4 shots, you push sliced 1, and you hit 1 solid. Awesome. Let's take a look. Caddy view down the line, and then I like the overhead views. Hard to get with 2D, but I like to see how many degrees of shoulder turn they have, how many degrees of that shoulder turn is made up from the hip turn and the knee turn. The older folks, I like to put them in a bowler position where the right foot is pulled back to kind of cheat the hip turn to get more turn at setup. Because as they age, their facet joints don't have the degree of freedom that they did when they were 18, 20. And then from there, I start looking down the line from P4 to P6. How is this hand path coming down? What are their knee flex doing? What are their tilts doing? Are they popping out of the tilt coming down? Then I switch to the front view, look at 6 to 9 from the caddy view to see what the butt end of the club, how that's rising through the shot. So as an instructor, we've got to make an opinion and formulate why this student stinks right now and how can we improve them. And this is kind of the pattern that I use. And P6 down the line, I look at the hand path coming around the arc, how well their hands are moving. Are they extending out too fast? Are they coming across the corner too fast? And
Mike, do you ever use, since you have gears, like I know I can kind of spin the figurine on Sports Box. I'm sure
Yep.
Gears is easily doing the same. Do you ever look at the angle of the figurine as if you're the flag, the target?
all
For
the time.
that for that last one where you said you look down the line to see the hands traveling kind of to the inside? Do you spin them to where like you're the flag and
All
show
the
the
time.
student that one?
All the time, so that you can see where the hands actually are versus assuming where they are through the body. I think it's called on from target view.
Yep.
So that's a fun one. I'm a little psychotic. I've actually put some students' phone on the target line or just left of the target line while I'm holding them, tell them to hit a push draw, make sure it starts to the right side. Now, mind you, it's their phone, and the younger they are, the more exciting they get. There's a good YouTube, pretty good one on Instagram I did with a 14-year-old girl who, you know, her phone's her prized possession. So I put it on a tripod and said, okay, start the ball to the right and curve back. You know, it's interesting to see if they move the path first or they move the face first. Like the first thing I would do is just open the face and slice the hell out of it. And then, oh, you got to hit a draw. Okay, I'm opening the face most, move the handle forward and then hitting the draw. But it's going to be the widest cone Kenny Perry draw you ever saw. I mean, if this curves axis tilt 1 degree, I'm happy because I live on my phone. But, you know, I've had tournament players do the same thing and they just shift the path so far to the right, they overhook it around the phone. And I'm like, well, if the face is responsible for the start line, the face is responsible for the start line. Stop shifting the path. So it really gets into the, we have some fun. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool.
And then we define the task of the golfer. What are they trying to do? And this is where I'll pull out that stick figure and go through the double pendulum model. You know, I'll explain, well, first thing we need to do is hit the ground solid. And then you can hit the ground solid and not hit it 20 yards and shoot 500 on the golf course. So you got to hit it solid, hit it far enough to play the golf course with scoring clubs. So those are really the first 2 fundamentals you're working for. And then you have your recommendations. Okay, we're going to start here, 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 and just go with it. You're going to practice. Let me take a look. And I'm going to overlay the 2. Okay, that was good. And I have a few case studies where I'll show how I did this with a doctor from Canada who's a really good guy. Came down and shot by shot, you can see how I'm laying in the pieces. And then you repeat the process. And the way you know they've got it is that they can demonstrate it and they can duplicate it. And then you ask them to explain back to you, okay, what are we doing here? What are you leaving with? Oh, Mike, I'm just feeling that my arms are staying straighter through the shot. Fantastic. That's a way you could play golf. There's a learning curve that as people start learning something, it gets more and more complicated, more and more complicated, more and more complicated. Then you get to the top and it starts getting easier and easier and easier. And then the bottom side of that curve is give it to me in 1 sentence. Okay, Mike, I'm just going to put my weight forward, move my hands around the arc. I'm good. I worked with Doug Barron last week and, you know, we went through that learning curve where he got frustrated. The caddy's getting frustrated. Ball's not going where we want. Keep plugging away, knowing that you're on point. And then the final thing was, I'm just going to go play with, feel like my butt's in a chair. I'm just sitting in a chair. I'm just moving my arms around. I'm not spinning my hips because he had big hip thrust issue. Okay, do that. And he called me the next day. I'm just sitting in a chair. Perfect. So that simple 2 words has all that sophistication in it that he can't remember. He doesn't want to remember. He's not supposed to remember. But it needed to go through the process to get to that point where it's just give it to me in 2 words. Sit in a chair, 3 words.
To find the right thought to
exactly
kind of take the 90 minutes of the lesson into 2-3 thoughts, which is obviously always like the golden nugget and in what I would say is like the end of your good lessons where you're just like, wow, we were able to come to a conclusion of do this, feel this, hopefully their own words, and getting the result that you're achieving.
Yes. And then I
interrupt you here too, real quick. You know, one of the questions we got, and I think, you know, obviously it was a question I had in my mind, you know, when I first thought about, you know, trying to get you onto this call was you come from these 2, what we would think are different worlds, right? Like stack and tilt, gears. It's like Fox News or CNN, like as if they're these 2 different things. But I think even just hopefully everyone's taken away from what I'm learning from you now is, hey, stack and tilt kind of taught you to put things or organize things, put them in a system.
Yep.
You're using gears to measure it. Like you're not, it's not like, hey, this one's telling you X and the other one's telling you Y. And now you're almost confusing yourself or the student. It's just kind of like, no, gears is my MRI, stack and tilt is my organization and my system and my blueprint. And I'm just kind of using it. Again, I'm just using them together, not necessarily, all right, let's see if this player works with stack and tilt. Let me see if gears, you know, I think that's something that hopefully everyone's taken away is, you know, they're not necessarily 2 different things. You're just using them to.
I would push back a little bit on that, Cody, and saying that it's not quite Fox News and CNN because they're not opposing theories. One's just a measurement system, and the other one is just a blueprint, like you said, or an architectural blueprint to see where to go and how to go. Gears doesn't say anything. it just measures what a person's doing, and then
Yeah.
it's you as an instructor to make the change. So is there anything that I teach now differently than I did on gears? So I'd say no. The reason I say that is because stack and tilt was, the first thing that was saying that the spine extends, tilts, and turns. And Andy and Mike should get credit for the extension component of that. People were talking about tilts, people were talking about turn, but Mike and Andy were putting the three of them together in a three-dimensional space. So we knew what the graph needed to be before we saw it. So we knew that through 2D images that the spine started 5 degrees to the right. And then when you're measuring the body, you always have to measure at right angles to the plane of motion. So the frontal plane, caddy view, when you're turned 90 degrees, you no longer are looking in the caddy view. Your chest is pointing down the line 90 degrees. So you have to keep the camera at right angles to you. Well, the spine's tilted to the left. And, this was an argument 18 years ago in the Central New York section. I was pointing, if anybody wants to have some fun, go look at the Stack and Tilt seminar from like 18 years ago in the Central New York section. It almost came to blows. But people were arguing that the spine didn't tilt. Well, every golfer who's ever played golf who's any good always tilted to the opposite side of the turn. Now it's to the point where it's like, oh, yeah, stop saying it. Everybody tilts hashtags getting overwhelming for people, and we just keep doubling down on it because it's kind of fun for us. Anyways, so always measuring the body at right angles. The spine is always moving, extending, tilting, and turning in 3 planes of motion. So the graphs, we knew what they should be. Gears is showing us those graphs as they play out. As the spine goes from P1 to P4, it's tilting in the opposite direction. So I'm trying to think, is there anything I would teach differently? I mean, I remember the first time I saw Andy, he came up to Port Chester drove up from Philly 2 hours. We looked at one swing for 2 hours. And we analyzed each joint by joint. And what he did more than anything was teach me how to learn, how to observe. So he knew what the knee turn, the tilts were supposed to be at P6 without even seeing P6. And it was pretty crazy knowing how much each joint angle needs to be for Mike Bennett's swing, or what it would be knowing his swing on video and saying, well, it's going to be about 12 degrees. I'd pull it up exactly a piece. There it is, 12 degrees. Like, how'd you know that? He's like, spent a lot of time with a protractor in a library and looking at Golf Digest. So if anybody wants to really learn how to teach, let me just get off of this Zoom for a sec, off the presentation for a second, and share my folder here. So I have a Dropbox folder of all these pictures. So I think the coach is as good as the pictures he can show. We can pull up any one of these. Let me share my entire screen here. You can start doing comparisons. You can start making spectrums. I mean, there's so much to choose from here.
Well, Michael, maybe this is kind of leading into the last 15, 20 minutes in our conversation, where I kind of wanted to hop into what you're doing currently with some players.
Yeah.
I think if anyone has tuned in to TGL recently, they might be seeing a so-called Kevin Kisner making a little bit of a different move on that golf ball right now. And
he is.
I think a lot of people maybe don't know you're kind of a part of that team.
Yeah, I've been brought in as of I got brought in late last year. So the background is Ryan Bream's caddy Lee Cheney grew up under Andy Plummer, and Ryan dedicated his win in Puerto Rico a couple of years ago just from reading the book. So they started working together after he won, and then when they were in Kentucky, Lee asked Kiz if he wanted some help with Andy sometime. So they got together there. And then Andy told him to work with Marion Dantzler, who's a great instructor in South Carolina. And they live like an hour away from each other. And they both speak South Carolinian. So it was a good match for the two of them. And then they brought me in as there were some shaft questions. There were some swing questions. They wanted to get on gears. Kevin had been down on gears with his previous instructor. That's the gold swing here. And he came in Saturday, and we did some shaft fitting stuff as well. So it's been fun working with Kevin. He's a lot smarter than he lets off to be. I had to stop him and ask him, I go, how did you get so good at anatomical terms? And he kind of had a wry smile and said, well, I pay attention. I said, okay. So
It's from all the deer hunting, I bet.
might be. He loves his deer hunting.
Yeah.
So the swing on the left was with his previous coach, and one of the things that there's a lot here to pay attention to. But if we just started address, we look from below, you can see that his trail foot is pretty straight here. If anything, it's turned out maybe a few degrees. I'm just going to put a visual here on that right.
So you're talking about in terms of its
internal and external
square.
rotation of the hip. Yeah.
The
where
classic,
the foot is pointing.
the toes pointing at midnight.
Yes, straight up and down. That would be number one. And then when we looked at his swing from down the line, I just gotta move some of these visuals here. Okay, so from down the line, if we just take away some of these visuals here to make it a little bit easier to see. So on the left, you can see where he was, or in the gold one, his spine was a lot straighter. His sight line was much more up. He wasn't as rounded with his back. You can see the lordosis in his lower spine here. That has
Was he having some lower back pain?
No, but he wasn't hitting it very far, and he was push cutting everything. That was his problem. He couldn't get his drawback. So there were some massive changes here at address that we were able to put in so that the ball's now in his central vision or his foveal vision. There's a couple of things there. Secondly, you'll notice that his weight is now more forward. You can see this by, if you look at where this pelvis is. Now, the pelvis sway graph in gear starts at 0 no matter what. But anatomically, you can see if we overlay these, the blue pelvis is further forward than the gold pelvis is when you overlay them. So we also had him turn his trail foot out more degrees. So if we look at that from below, you'll see how much his feet are turned out more, and he's actually closed with his stance.
Was that to get the fixed path? Was he swinging too straight or something to hit the push draw, or?
Well, you're gonna get more draw bias for sure, and definitely we closed his shoulders 5 degrees, so there's definitely more draw built in. I mean, Kevin loves to sling draws. I mean, the more Kenny Perry draw is like a small draw from him. He wants this thing curving, and his previous coach said, "Well, you're not going to win majors if you have that much curve." And then he fell off the world ranking list. So there are things that he likes to see visually. He doesn't like to see a ball go too straight. Now, if we take this to the top of the backswing, there's some interesting motions here of his spine by the time he gets to the top here. He's only got 80, this number's reversed, so it's only 3.41 degrees of, 93 degrees of shoulder turn. 86, it's inverted. So we've got 94 degrees, 93 degrees of shoulder turn, 50 of hip turn, and 29 of knee turn. And you can see when we overlay these two, how much more the shoulder turn is. It's like 120 degrees versus 95 from the face on. More importantly, he's turned more degrees with the pelvis being more forward. So his pelvis was 0.2 back. Now it's 1.1 forward, and it started more forward. So the delta here between where the pelvis was and where it is now is about 2 inches.
Yeah.
And where we didn't make him more flexible. He got older. So where did the extra rotation come from? Well, it came from the external rotation of the trail hip because the foot was flared now more at address. So if we go back to the below picture, you can see how much more foot flare his trail foot has versus the internal rotation of the lack of foot flare in the before. And I want to be clear about this. Foot flare is not a foot motion, it's a hip motion. So your femur can rotate in the socket, in the hip socket, about 45 degrees outward and about 40 degrees inward. So if you start with more foot flare, you'll be able to internally rotate more degrees to the top of the backswing. And that's where the extra rotation is coming from. So you can see, as a result, also down the line, his hand path starts going more around. His tilts are better and they're more around him. And as he comes down through the shot, he's got more depth in the horizontal plane coming around. He's not coming in as steep as he once was. The club's more in. The pelvis is shifted more forward. And as he comes through the shot, the exit now, or the hand path as we go through, you'll see the club staying on the arc longer. Let me take away some of these visuals so you can see it. The hand path here, you'll see that at P8, here's the view that you were looking for, Cody.
Yep.
Handle is more in, the club is more out in gold. So he's got that draw built in, keeping that around versus flipping this wrist a little bit more and cupping the lead wrist and moving the handle out. So from overhead, the gold one has the hand path moving more around him. Pull that up here with the hand path. So the gold hand path is coming around him more, and yet he has more draw because the club head path is going out longer. So you can see the face is more close to the shaft here at impact.
And gold was the original, right?
Gold was the original.
Club was moving further right, but his hands were going further left.
Yes.
Causing just, inconsistent contact or control of the ball.
Sorry, I said that backwards. So the face to path relationship now went from only 0.34 close to 3.64 close. So you have a bigger push draw kicking in.
Got it.
And the face more open, and he has more club head speed as a result. Also, from the face on view, you'll see the position of this lead knee. Position of this lead knee is more forward at P6. Get this lined up. So the left knee is more forward. That's going to have implications on his low point being more forward. It's also going to have implications on the angle of attack being more down and more out, which is what he's looking for. He's looking for more draw. So you can see how that left knee now is, separate these two out. You can see how much straighter it was in gold, which was pushing his pelvis too far back. Now his pelvis is more closed by seeing more of the right hip here to address. Pull it up from the top, and we'll look at the overlay here. How much more the knee stance line is closed. The knee stance line's, what's that, 20 degrees almost, 20 degrees more closed. The hips went from 125 to 130, so they're 5 degrees more closed, and the shoulders are more open. More open to the hips than they were before. So you're getting this transfer of energy of the shoulder turn passing the hip turn. I know there's a lot on this screen here, and I apologize, but it's hard to show it all, especially when I start getting excited here. So
Mike, maybe we can, because there's probably only like 5 minutes left here, so
sure.
Hop into the chat. There's a bunch here.
Great.
One, maybe if we can, there's like 4 or 5 questions, so maybe we can do like a 1-minute answer, kind of like each one possibly.
Sure.
I know there's probably 40 minutes of conversation with each question, but looks like during your analysis, can you pinpoint the amount of pressure or strength used between the lead and trail arms on the downswing / grip pressure?
No. Hi, Peter. I don't measure kinetically, I measure kinematically. So what I can see in the golf swing is where things are when and where. So the way I do that is I can look at the side-by-side of, let me just take away some of these things. I can look at how much the shoulder, for example, the fourth accumulator on the golfing machine, how much more the lead arm is off the chest. So now it's 92 degrees versus 74. So the butt end of the club is now further forward at the same point. Let me get P6 there. So the butt end of the club in blue is further forward. And how did that get there? Well, I can look at it by the left arm coming down more, and then I can also look at the right elbow bend. So the right elbow is straighter by 22 degrees now. So the left arm pulling across and the right arm straightening is what's moving the butt end of the club forward more. So can I see the pressure that creates? I don't care to, respectfully. I listened to Dr. Phil Cheatham say that 20 years ago, they looked at kinematics over kinetics, and they looked at kinetics and said, there's no way to use this properly because summing it all up is a waste of time. those were his words. I'm paraphrasing. So I'm a measurement guy. I need to know where things are, not how fast, not the pressure those things are creating.
Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah.
But you're asking the wrong person if you want to answer.
Get a
I'm sure they
pressure in.
can.
Yeah. Um,
Michael
I'm
Bulger.
I'm gonna skip to one though, because I think this one's really awesome. Shay said, "What metric do you measure with gears that influences the low point the most?" I think most of us in our everyday teaching, whether you're using technology or even just using the divot board, that shows you the divot on the ground if you're in the indoor world, like we're all trying to get our club members divot further forward and strike ball first. So
Right.
maybe
So number one fundamental, I would say the primary driver of the low point is where the pelvis is at impact, more forward. The question of how much forward, is there too much forward? Well, yeah. The left hip would be over the left ankle at impact, not behind it. Most of our high handicap golfers have that lead hip too far back. However, I'm not saying that the pelvis alone will do it. You could still release the wrists and dorsiflex the lead wrist and palmar flex the trail wrist, which are all of our high handicappers do, and move the low point back by lengthening the arc. So having the handle forward, keeping your arm straight, and keeping the pelvis forward would be the fastest way to get the low point forward.
Yeah.
That's a great question.
And then too, like you could obviously this could be a 40-minute conversation in its own, but like what about the knee too? Like obviously I think you were showing kind of the comparisons of Kisner, like he was straightening that left knee earlier, where
Yeah.
now it looked like he was, I think Gears is kind of, from what I've heard and seen as an outsider looking in, like we're actually kind of letting that knee get over that ankle, maybe even past it.
Yes. So if you Google any historic photos of Nicholas at impact, especially with an iron, those
Yeah.
knees were bent and going forward. He
Yeah.
wasn't trying to create the most ground forces, especially with an iron approaching to the green. These guys need to hit it straight. You might have some faster extension with the driver, and it's on a tee. I get that. There's some power requirements, but again, the question is when, where, and how much of a thing do you want to do? And I would prefer to get more power from the horizontal plane by moving my arms around me like a whip cracking than I would jumping up and down like a jack in the box, because the club would go off like a fire hose and be very difficult to control the vertical swing plane. But that's just me.
Yeah. And then we got probably for just this one last one. Sorry, I know there were some other questions there, guys. I'm just trying to be cognizant of everyone's time here. Club path, using gears in your technology. It sounded like maybe on one of the swings you were showing there, his club path got to about 6 degrees to the right. Like,
yes.
Here we go. In the system of teaching golf, like, do you have club path parameters, whether with stack and tilts or what you're seeing on gears? Like, is there?
Oh, we do.
Try to not go.
Oh, we do. And yes, Mike, that swing was 6 degrees to the right. Because again, he wants a big draw. So this will be the enhanced grid where I have different ball positions, back 1, back 2, back 3, back 4, and I got different handle positions up and back as well. The black handle locations would be the lowest vertical swing plane. The gold handle location would be the highest vertical swing plane. So let's say you have a slicer coming in, their handle is the lowest, they're furthest back here at B6, and the club is angled forward at B1, they're wasting all their energy. Your high handicap over the top flipper. What I would do to that golfer is I would move the handle up and forward most, move the ball back and in the most, so they could hit out the most and hit the biggest push draw. Kisner wants more curve, so he's going to go from 4 degrees down to 6 degrees, 4 out to 6 out, to make sure he has the cone and as wide as he wants. However, that face was only 3 degrees open, so it had a nice 3C curve. It was a big curve, and he just likes that curve. That's what he wants to hit. A friend of mine coached Alex Noren for a little bit the year before last, and he got him hitting this great straight ball. He's like, I need this thing slicing. Players players are funny.
Yeah.
They think things are a priority because of the most random things, like, I played good when I sliced it.
Hmm.
Okay, well, can we keep it in play when crosswinds? Different question. But
Like I think Dr. Scotland said one time in one of the seminars I went to, he was just like, humans are messy, right? And it's just like that.
great way to say it.
It's not just us physically. I think he was also maybe even referring to us mentally. But I think what's cool that you're pointing out is though, you know, I think some people maybe have the perception, hey, I'm gonna go get this stack and tilt system lesson from Mike, and it's your way or the highway. Where really, Kisner's coming in and saying, hey, I want to hit the ball better, and I want to see more curve, and you're using your system and measuring it with gears to get him to where he wants to go.
Yeah.
It's not no, Kisner, I don't want you to do that. That's not what we're going to do. No, you have to have a straighter ball flight if you want to win majors. You're like, okay, you want to curve it more? Great. Like here
How
we
you
go.
doing?
Like you're the
You're the
CEO,
expert,
you're the
Kevin.
CEO of your golf game. I'm just here to like be
Exactly.
a board member to get you to where you want to go.
That's well said. I'm part of the team. And in fact, Kisner's fun because we kind of align our priorities. Like, he wants a draw and he wants a big draw. I'm like, okay, it's all I ever wanted to hit in my life.
Yeah.
Then I got a player like Dickie Pride, who's like, my ball starts left and curves back. And I'm like, okay, because I thought you only teach draws. I go, I teach whatever you want fixed. Like, can you predictably start this ball to the left and curve it to the right? And when he comes ask me, why is this ball push cutting on me? So, well, face is open to the shaft. You need to have this face a little bit more closed, but it has to still be left to the right. And then he starts overdrawing him. Well, why is it curving left? Well, face is too close to the shaft. Right? I can't have a two-way miss, Mike. I go, I don't want you to have a two-way miss. I want you to start your ball where you want it to go and curve it back. And I'm just showing you the pieces. So, we work a lot with palm reflection coming down with him and getting more cup of the left wrist. And he just got a top 12 on a sponsor's invite, had a double bogey on the back nine on Sunday this past week at Naples. He's burned about it, but here's a guy who wants to get his card back. And he's waiting on sponsors invite. So he's close to winning and playing well, getting his card back. I'll put it that way versus winning, but there's a lot of stuff that happens from winning. But if we can indulge me for 5 minutes, I know people have jobs and things to do. But here's a golfer that came in. I'll show you his swing in full speed. This is just a club golfer, probably a 15 handicap, plays a lot of golf, who's actually overdrawing the ball. And you can see just by the hand path and the gray follow through lines here. I don't know if that's too fast, but the club's going out, the head's bouncing all over the place. There's a lot going on here. He's a wonderful guy. But there's a couple of things we need to kind of coordinate here in his swing. I'll go through this one a little faster than I normally do. But first thing you can see is the head's pulling up, going back, and it's also going outside the head bubble, and returning down and then popping up again. So he's got the fluctuation of the low point moving all over the place. So that was swing 4. And then in swing 8 or so, I asked him to get his head as tall as he could going back and feel like his head was going forward. So we made a change here, getting the head to not go back, but go forward and stay more centered. So now the spine went from 3 degrees bent over to 5 degrees bent backwards. Okay, so we got that spinning plate kind of managed. His pelvis is a lot more centered. When we overlay these, the pelvis is a little bit more forward, the head is more forward. Good. Keep going here on the progression of the lesson. Now we ask him to get the inclination just right. So now his head's going forward, but not going too far forward. So he's got the left shoulder going down, left knee flexing. So when we look at this from down the line, now his inclination to the ground started 52, 53. It stays more stable at the top by 4 degrees. So he's a little bit more in a side tilt. And we show him that. We practice a little bit more. And as we go back on this one, start moving the hand path around him. I'll pull out the club head path. So now you can see the hand path. there's a backswing, a downswing, and the gray on both of these is the follow through. On the right, you can see how those lines were all lining up on top of them now. So the inclination is more stable a little bit, maybe not on this swing, but the hand path is more around him. The face isn't going so far into out, and the arms are down in the follow through, allowing him to kind of get to that front side of the arc a little bit better in blue.
Mhm.
He's a little bit more centered in his pivot. His hands are going around him more. He's a
His
little,
pelvis looks like it's not, spending the entire backswing going back like the first figurine did, or his first swing. It's like he's shifting back all the way to P4, where now it's like, hey, he's kind of breaking or kind of resisting some of that urge to want to continue to keep shifting back.
exactly. So his pelvis is now at 0 at the top of the backswing where it started versus 1.8 inches back. So that's going to help with the low point being more forward to start with. As he's coming down to P6, that left hip is going to be a little bit more forward. It's pretty much the same there. But the
And that
hand,
kind of answers that one question too a little bit. I know you didn't touch on it, but one of the questions earlier was like the pelvis side bend. You know, that's getting cleaned up at P4 as well. I know Michael had one of those questions.
I didn't see that question. I'm sorry.
It was like, looks like pelvis side bend is half of where he started at the top. And then he was like, what influenced that the most? So I think he saw as you were playing the video that there was
Yeah.
maybe some less side bend.
So if I remember on Kiz, that was due to his lordosis and his right knee. He was told to keep kicked in. His hip internally rotated the most. His right foot square and a flatter shoulder turn. The coach wanted his chest to be over his right foot at the top of the back. So he wanted his right foot, his right shin, his right femur, and his right hip all in a line at the top of the backswing. He wanted it stacked on his right side. Versus, Carl Alexander's father has a great photo, I think it was at Westchester, of Hogan from the rear view of that trail hip going towards the target with a forward. Westchester or Waikiki, I can't remember that Hogan.
Westchester, I
Thank you.
think. They lived at the back of the range.
Yeah. So open to questions and pull up any data anybody has here. I appreciate you humoring me with Anthony here for one swing to show how we did that progression. But I think it's important to show how things are put together. A couple of things on ROI on gears. We get back to the, it took me 6 months to make my money back on gears. We paid $46,000 for it. I think the new system's like 26, 28. I'm not exactly sure. What we do a lot of is get the club fitting on gears as well, which is a separate conversation, but dynamic lie and dynamic loft are important. And then my 3 takeaways, if I could sum up today, is educate up rather than dumb down. Our students are very influential at some of these private high-end clubs that I've been fortunate enough to be a part of and meet. They're not stupid, even though they will call up and ask what time the 9 o'clock shotgun's at. So they can be trained, and it's you as an instructor that they're relying on to educate them up. So don't be afraid to make them smarter. The second thing I'd leave you guys with is acknowledging that systems are beneficial. There's every successful student I know. Was it 2012? Butch Harmon spoke to the Met PGA, and he said, "I don't use a method. I don't use a system." And then the next person asked, "Well, how do you give a lesson?" Well, first thing I do is I look at the divot, then I listen to the ball, then I look at the ball flight, then I look at their grip, then I look at their stance. Sounds like you got a system, Butch. No, we don't have a system. So the crux of calling systematic instruction systematic, I think that tide is turned, or it should be. The days of just going to see somebody because they have magic dust is over. I think our students appreciate the fact that you can break down, how something is put together and how this person wants to put together. So don't be afraid to call it a system, and then document your results and theories digitally and in print form. I have a binder that's like this thick of just pictures that I showed you my digital binder. I leave that in the studio and people just thumb through it when I'm not there, and it's got a lot of information. People say, oh, you walk through the men's grill and they say, oh, everybody swings the same anyways. And then I can pull up a slide of the 3 major champion winners from 2007. You have Padraig Harrington with the shaft leaning the most forward, hitting it highest on the face. You got Trevor Immelman moving the handle back the furthest with hitting it lowest on the face. And you got Tiger, who hit it pretty much at 0 with their face pretty centered. And you can just drop that and say they don't all hit all the same, Mr. Smith, and just walk away. So, you're here to educate them. You can have some fun with that too, but having a documentation, that's why I like all the social media between Instagram and all these other avenues of being able to put your work there. And I'm still not Insta famous, and I thank God I don't want to be. But being able to get results on the tour is a little bit different than getting results at your club. I made my money and I got good as an instructor dealing with 5 to 30 handicappers, and I think that's where the most fun is and the most upside. The tour is a little bit different stress. The Champions Tour is a lot less stress, but it's very competitive and it's a different level, and the time for education is not really there, because they can do a lot of things pretty well, and you just got to give them the right piece and monitor it. So having their boundaries of what's too much, what's too little, is where I kind of deal with the better players. And quite frankly, I do a lot with my quad and making sure that faces don't cave in, and that, because they don't have a lot of club techs on the Champions Tour. I will put my machine in front of Alex's ball every day to make sure that his club head isn't heating up. I think Kirk O'Gurry will appreciate that, and making sure that the backups are ready, that the grooves aren't wearing out, keeping the spin rates in the window. There's a lot of monitoring that's already done by the techs on the regular tour that I'm doing for my guys on the Champions Tour, and that's kind of fun. And this year we had a new ball from Titleist come out, so everybody's asking questions about the ball, and fortunately our Methodist network has a lot of people at Titleist that I can sneak into their DMs and ask them, hey, should Dickey Pride switch from the 2019 ball to the 2025? And get interesting answers. So Cody, thank you so much.
Michael, thank you so much for
wants to talk.
being here with us, taking time out of your busy day. I always appreciate the people we're able to get on these education calls, pulling them away from the tour. A couple weeks ago we had Corey Jez, who does course strategy for touring pros, and it was like elbowing him to hey, could you tell Cantley to go figure it out and you come talk to us? So yourself included, pulling you away from a conversation with Kisner or Cheka to talk to us. We really appreciate it. So yeah, I'm glad that you just changed the screen to that. That was my next thing, was everyone, you can find Michael. He's on Instagram. It's a great page to follow. It's always got interesting content. If you've got time, go to Stuart, Florida. Go to 24/7 indoor golf. He's
25 minutes away from PGA Village. So we're not.
And he's incredibly great with his time and fitting in us no-name club pros in his busy schedule to help us out. So
if I can add one thing.
Yeah, please.
To close this, I've been very fortunate in this golf industry, as most of us have, to give more back than we took. So I think that's one of the things that defines us as golf professionals, is that we're willing to give back more than we received. And part of this whole process of golf instruction, or career in golf instruction, is educating up the next level of instructors to make sure that they were better than us as a whole. And I think as a group, I think we can do better, and I'm here for it. And I always discount for golf professionals for my normal rate, and people can always come and observe me for no charge. The fact that somebody wants to watch me teach golf is amazing. Also, the Met section continues to have tour players on the Champions Tour. I know Rob Labritz was there for 2 years, and he'll make it his way back. But to see Jason Karen this year out there on his first 2 weeks on tour has been fun. He's playing very well, so big fan of the Met section, and it's great to see all the continued success that the players there have between Darrell Kestner and leading the charge, and Sean Quinlivan and Charlie Bowling came in last week for a session. It's really fun to see you guys. I know Kirk gives me a hard time, but I'll get to see him soon, so it's good for everybody.
Well, again, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you being on. Everybody, again, quick reminder, hey, February 24th, we have another Zoom call. We're doing inventing a golf product and bringing it to the market with Craig Hucknall. And then again, sign up, go to the email that was sent out last night, 6 p.m. from the Met PGA, March 3 and 4. It's a Monday and a Tuesday. The Troon Coach Northeast Summit. It's awesome. Again, Mike Jacobs, Chuck Cook, Ledbetter, Breed, Monique, just a lot of great instructors at the Golf Zone in Scarsdale. So some great stuff coming up. And use those links in the emails that the Met PGA provides. Those are your fastest, quickest ways to sign up. Thank you again, Michael. Awesome. Always appreciate. I think every time I listen to you, I feel like I just started over in golf and I know nothing about the golf instruction, and I'm just always trying to catch up. So thank you so much.
Appreciate you, Cody. I look forward to catching up with everybody this summer. At some point, I'll be in the Met section visiting clients, and happy to show up and be America's favorite guest for a few days.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.